G'day legends! Welcome to another brand new video. This one's gonna be a cracker. In the quiet suburbs of Melbourne, where every streetlight hides a secret, one brutal crime shattered the calm of an ordinary night. A missing woman, a blood-stained letter, and a neighbor who swears he saw nothing? Or did he? This is not just another crime. It's a story that will twist your mind, drag you through the shadows, and make you question how well you really know the people next door. Stay with me, because what starts as a simple disappearance soon explodes into one of the darkest mysteries Australia has ever seen. The vanishing on Hawthorne Street. Melbourne's Hawthorne Street wasn't the kind of place where drama usually unfolded. Lined with neat weatherboard houses, manicured lawns, and the faint scent of eucalyptus drifting through the evening breeze, it was the picture of suburban calm. Neighbors waved at each other on their morning walks, kids rode bicycles along the pavement, and the most exciting news anyone usually heard was about a garage sale or a new coffee shop opening down the road. But on the night of September 12th, 2021, that illusion of safety shattered. At exactly 8:47 p.m., Emily Carter, a 29-year-old nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital, was last seen stepping out of her small brick rental home. According to the CCTV footage later recovered from a nearby service station, Emily walked briskly down the street, her phone in hand, her hair tied back in a messy bun, and her work bag slung over one shoulder. She looked like any other exhausted shift worker heading home, except she never made it back. By midnight, her housemate, Claire Donovan, grew concerned. Claire knew Emily's schedule better than anyone. The two had shared the house for nearly 3 years. "She never stayed out without telling me," Claire told detectives later. "She always sent a text if she was running late. Always." The next morning, Emily's bed was still untouched. Her uniform lay folded neatly on the chair in her room, her purse was still on the kitchen counter, and her keys hung on the hook by the door. Only her phone was missing. The first suspicions, Detective Sergeant Marcus Hale, a seasoned officer with Victoria Police, was assigned the case. Hale had seen his fair share of disappearances, but something about this one didn't sit right. "She walked into thin air," he muttered, as he stood outside Emily's front yard, scanning the quiet street. Neighbors reported seeing Emily that evening, but their accounts didn't quite align. Mr. Bennett, the retired teacher next door, claimed he saw Emily talking to someone in a dark sedan parked near the corner. Mrs. Lewis, across the road, swore she only saw Emily walking alone with her phone, no car in sight. A teenager on the block insisted he heard a sharp scream around 9, but his parents dismissed it as TV noise. Every witness had a different story. The blood-stained letter. On the third day of Emily's disappearance, police combed the area more thoroughly. That's when they discovered something chilling in the alleyway behind Hawthorne Street. Beneath a pile of damp newspapers and rubbish, an officer uncovered a crumpled envelope, smeared with what looked unmistakably like dried blood. Inside was a single sheet of paper. In messy, hurried handwriting were the words, "She knew the truth. Now she's gone." The forensics team confirmed the blood matched Emily's DNA. Suddenly, this wasn't just a missing person case. It was a crime scene. Claire under suspicion. Naturally, suspicion first fell on Emily's housemate, Claire. Detectives questioned her late into the night. Her story never changed. She'd been home watching Netflix, ordering takeaway Thai, and had fallen asleep on the couch around 10 p.m. The food delivery receipt confirmed part of her alibi, but there were still 2 critical hours unaccounted for. "People think they know their flatmates," Detective Hale said grimly to his partner. "But when someone vanishes, it's always the person closest who knows more than they admit." Claire swore she was innocent, but her nervous energy, trembling hands, and the way her eyes flicked towards the floor during questioning only deepened police suspicion. The neighbor who saw nothing. Then there was Daniel Reeves, the neighbor whose testimony puzzled everyone. He insisted he hadn't seen Emily that night, despite his front window offering a perfect view of the street. Detectives found that odd. Reeves was a middle-aged accountant, living alone, known to keep to himself. Hale decided to pay him another visit. Inside Reeves' tidy home, Hale noticed small things. A faint trace of mud near the back door, even though Reeves claimed he hadn't been outside in days. A pile of unopened mail on the counter, except one envelope had been torn open and hastily stuffed away. A lingering scent of strong disinfectant in the living room. Reeves's hands shook slightly as he poured tea for the detectives. "Look, I told you I didn't see her. Maybe I was on the phone. Maybe I was in the shower. I don't remember." But Hale did not believe him. Not for a second. The public frenzy. By the end of the week, Emily's face was everywhere. News outlets ran her smiling photo across headlines. Nurse vanishes without a trace. Social media exploded with speculation. Hashtags like Find Emily Carter trended nationwide. Some internet sleuths blamed Claire, others focused on the mysterious car, while a fringe group insisted Emily had staged her own disappearance. But none of them knew about the blood-stained letter. The police kept that detail secret, hoping it might smoke out the person responsible. A dark discovery. On day 9, a jogger in the Yarra Bend Park made a grim discovery. Deep in the undergrowth, only a few kilometers from Emily's home, lay her phone. The screen was shattered, the case smeared with dirt, but when technicians recovered the last recorded data, one chilling video file emerged. The footage was only 12 seconds long. Emily's terrified face filled the screen, her voice shaking as she whispered, "They know what I've done. Please." The video cut out abruptly. Detective Hale replayed the clip over and over, his stomach knotting tighter each time. Who was they? And what exactly had Emily done? For Hale, one thing was clear. This wasn't just about a missing nurse anymore. This was about secrets buried deep in Melbourne's suburbs, secrets someone was willing to kill for. And Emily, whether alive or dead, was at the heart of it. Secrets beneath the surface. Detective Sergeant Marcus Hale knew the 12-second video changed everything. Emily Carter wasn't just a victim of chance, she was caught in something darker, something dangerous. And the word "they" played in his head like a broken record. Who the hell are they? Hale muttered in the squad room, his eyes glued to the flickering phone footage on the evidence monitor. His partner, Senior Constable Annika Rowe, leaned forward. Could be a gang. Could be someone she worked with at the hospital. Or, she paused, maybe she uncovered something she shouldn't have. Hale rubbed his temples. Either way, Emily was scared. That wasn't random fear. That was the fear of someone who knew too much. A shadow at the hospital. The detectives decided to start where Emily spent most of her time, St. Vincent's Hospital. Nurses and doctors described her as kind, hardworking, and always the one to volunteer for the toughest shifts. But not everyone seemed eager to talk. One junior doctor, visibly uneasy, told Hale in a hushed voice, "Emily, she asked too many questions sometimes. About patients, about records. I think she stumbled into something bigger than her." When Hale pressed for details, the doctor clammed up, shaking his head. "I've said too much. Just be careful." That single line lit a spark of suspicion. What could a nurse discover in a hospital that would make her disappear? Claire's breaking point. Meanwhile, Emily's housemate, Claire, was crumbling under the media spotlight. Reporters camped outside the Hawthorne Street home, shoving microphones at her each time she left. One night, after hours of relentless questioning at the station, Claire broke down. Through tears, she confessed. "Emily told me she found something at work. Files. Records that didn't make sense. She said people were covering things up. She didn't tell me what exactly, just that if anything happened to her, I should look in her locker." That was enough to send Hale and Rose straight to the hospital storage room. Emily's locker, dusty and cold, held a brown folder wedged behind spare shoes. Inside were photocopies of patient files, but entire sections were blacked out. Even stranger, every file linked back to the same name, Dr. Adrian Morris, the head of surgery. Dr. Adrian Morris, respected or ruthless? On the surface, Dr. Morris was a hero, a respected surgeon, polished in his interviews, often seen in the media advocating for medical reforms. But Hale's instincts screamed otherwise. Hale confronted him in his office, the walls lined with awards and certificates. Morris smiled coolly, adjusting his tie. "Detective, I don't know what you think you found, but Emily Carter was a nurse. A good one, yes, but she wouldn't understand half the files she stumbled on. Blacked out sections, that's standard privacy redaction." His calm confidence unsettled Hale. He'd dealt with liars before, but Morris wasn't flustered in the slightest. He was either telling the truth, or he was very, very good at hiding something. Roe noticed something, though. On Morris's polished desk sat a letter opener with faint brown stains near the tip. She leaned closer, but Morris casually picked it up and tucked it into a drawer. "Blood?" she whispered later to Hale. He only nodded grimly. The neighbor cracks back on Hawthorne Street. Suspicions still lingered around Daniel Reeves, the quiet accountant. Hale returned with a warrant. Reeves resisted at first, but the moment officers began searching his garage, his composure crumbled. Inside, they found muddy boots, rope fibers, and, most damning of all, a burner phone with several encrypted messages. One message stood out. "She knows. Take care of it." Under pressure, Reeves confessed he had been paid to keep an eye on Emily. He claimed he didn't harm her, but admitted passing along information about her movements to someone else. "Who paid you?" Hale demanded. Reeves hesitated before whispering a name that chilled both detectives: Dr. Adrian Morris. The missing hours. Despite this breakthrough, there was still no sign of Emily herself. CCTV footage finally revealed something overlooked: a dark sedan circling Hawthorne Street at the exact time she vanished. The vehicle was traced to a shell company, later linked back to one of Dr. Morris's private business accounts. But why would a top surgeon orchestrate a nurse's disappearance? Roe pieced the puzzle together. What if Emily discovered malpractice, illegal surgeries, or worse, organ trafficking? The theory was wild, but the evidence lined up disturbingly well. Patients' files, blacked out records, and a surgeon with overseas connections. Emily's voice returns. On the 10th day, a breakthrough came. Digital forensics recovered fragments of deleted audio from Emily's phone. In one clip, Emily's trembling voice whispered, "They're using the hospital. It's not just money. It's people. If something happens to me, check the records." The hairs on Hale's arms stood up. Emily hadn't just been scared. She was exposing something monstrous. The trap. Determined to push Morris into a mistake, Hale devised a plan. They leaked a controlled piece of information to the press. Victoria police are close to identifying Emily's abductor. That very night, Morris booked a one-way flight to Singapore. Airport police intercepted him at the gate, and while his calm facade remained, his eyes betrayed the first flicker of fear. But with no body, no direct proof of murder, and Morris's expensive lawyers circling, the case stood on shaky ground. A haunting return. Then, on the 12th night, a call came through that flipped the investigation on its head. A jogger reported seeing a woman, barefoot, disheveled, and muttering incoherently, wandering near the Yarra River. Police rushed to the scene. And there, under the dim glow of streetlights, was Emily Carter, alive. Her eyes were hollow, her voice broken. She clutched Hale's arm and whispered, "I told you? They'll kill us all if I talk." The nurse who came back. The night Emily Carter was found alive, Melbourne held its breath. News vans swarmed outside the hospital where she was admitted, and reporters shouted questions that went unanswered. Inside her private ward, security officers guarded the door like she was the Prime Minister. Detective Sergeant Marcus Hale and Constable Anika Rowe sat silently at her bedside, waiting. Emily's hands shook as she clutched a paper cup of water, her lips cracked from dehydration. Her hair was tangled, her hospital gown loose on her frail frame. But her eyes, wide, restless, carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. "Emily," Hale said softly, "you're safe now, but we need to know what happened. Who took you?" Emily's gaze flicked toward the door before returning to Hale. "Safe?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. They're everywhere. Doctors, police, people you'd never suspect. If I talk, they'll know." Roe leaned closer. "Who are they?" Emily swallowed hard. For a moment, it seemed she would say nothing. Then, in a voice barely audible, she spoke. "They run the hospital like a business. Not just patients, bodies. They sell them. Organs, bones, blood, whatever makes money. And I found the proof." The detectives exchanged a grim look. Emily's claims sounded insane, but the evidence already pointed to something sinister. Fragments of memory. Over the next 2 days, Emily's memories surfaced in fragments. She described being grabbed from behind near the corner of Hawthorne Street, chloroform pressed over her mouth. When she woke, she was in a dim room, tied to a chair, voices whispering outside the door. They kept asking what I told Claire, what I'd copied. I said nothing, but they didn't believe me. she said, clutching her knees to her chest. She remembered the sound of a man's voice, calm, professional, with a faint British accent. "That's him," she said firmly when shown recordings of Dr. Adrian Morris's interviews. But what chilled Hale most was Emily's claim that she saw another prisoner. A man in his 20s, emaciated, with an IV line jammed into his arm. He looked like a patient, but they weren't healing him. They were keeping him alive for something. When Hale asked if the man was still alive, Emily shook her head violently. "No, they took him away. I heard them say he was ready for shipment." Dr. Morris denies all. Dr. Adrian Morris, still in custody, dismissed Emily's story as delusion. "She's been through trauma," his lawyer argued. "Hallucinations are common in kidnapping survivors. There is no evidence tying Dr. Morris to these wild accusations." Yet behind the scenes, Hale's team uncovered bank transfers linking Morris to offshore accounts. Millions of dollars moved quietly through shell companies, all traced back to medical supply fronts. "Looks less like hallucination and more like organized crime," Rowe muttered, scanning the files. The hospital in question. Victoria police launched a covert investigation into St. Vincent's Hospital. What they found shocked even seasoned detectives. Restricted wards with missing patient records. Empty beds billed to Medicare under false names. Tissue samples logged but never matched to patients. Emily's folder of photocopied files suddenly made terrifying sense. Still, without direct proof of patients being trafficked, the case risked collapsing. The insider. That's when fortune arrived in the form of a whistleblower. A young nurse, Alicia Tran, came forward after hearing Emily had survived. In tears, she confessed that she too had seen things. They called them special cases. Patients brought in at night, no paperwork, no names. We were told to keep quiet or lose our jobs. I didn't know what they did with them, but sometimes they just vanished. Alicia's testimony cracked the case wide open. For the first time, police had a second witness confirming Emily's claims. The break-in. 2 nights later, the investigation nearly derailed. A masked intruder broke into Emily's hospital room, bypassing security. Hale and Rowe arrived just in time, catching a shadowy figure crouched beside her bed with a syringe. The man fled through a fire escape, but not before Hale tackled him to the ground. The syringe rolled across the tiles, filled with a clear liquid later identified as potassium chloride, enough to stop a heart in seconds. The intruder refused to speak, but fingerprints tied him to a private security firm employed by, once again, Dr. Morris. "This isn't just a cover-up," Hale growled. "It's a war." Emily speaks out. Despite the danger, Emily insisted on making a public statement. Standing before flashing cameras, her voice trembled but did not break. "They tried to silence me," she said, "but I won't be silent anymore. What's happening inside our hospitals is a crime against humanity, and the people behind it wear white coats." The country erupted. Public outrage flooded Parliament, demanding investigations into hospital corruption. For the first time, Emily's story was no longer just a missing persons case. It was a scandal that threatened to shake Australia's medical system to its core. The deadly warning. But that same night, a package arrived at the police station addressed to Hale. Inside was a single human kidney, vacuum sealed, with a note attached. "Stop digging, or more will go missing." Even hardened officers went pale at the sight. The message was clear. The organization Emily had uncovered was powerful, ruthless, and willing to kill again. The turning tide. Instead of backing down, Hale doubled his efforts. He authorized raids on Morris's storage facilities, uncovering chilling evidence. Refrigerated units filled with unlabeled medical containers, falsified patient charts, a hidden operating room with restraints bolted to the table. Each discovery painted a picture darker than the last. This wasn't just malpractice. This was industrial-scale organ trafficking. And yet the organization's reach was vast. Files hinted at international partners, overseas buyers, and corrupt officials turning blind eyes. Emily's fear. Even with police protection, Emily remained haunted. Some nights she jolted awake screaming, convinced someone was watching her. "It won't stop," she whispered to Claire one evening. "Even if Morris goes to prison, there are others, bigger than him." Claire held her hand, tears running down her cheeks. "You're not alone anymore, Em. You've started something bigger than them. That's what they're afraid of." Hale knew she was right. The closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. And somewhere, hidden in Melbourne's shadows, the real masterminds were already planning their next move. The network in the shadows. Detective Sergeant Marcus Hale had been on the force for 2 decades, but nothing in his career had prepared him for the scale of what Emily Carter had revealed. Organ trafficking, hidden wards, secret surgeries. It sounded like the stuff of movies, yet the evidence piled higher every day. Still, something gnawed at Hale. For all the damning files, the whistleblowers, and the attempted silencing of Emily, there was one unanswered question. Who was really pulling the strings? Dr. Adrian Morris was a key player, no doubt. But Hale knew men like Morris. Ambitious, greedy, arrogant. They were rarely masterminds. They were pawns in a larger game. The International Trail Row sat beside Hale in the squad room, poring over financial records. Look at this, she said, tracing her finger along a line of transactions. Offshore accounts, payments disguised as medical research grants. But the money trail didn't stop at Singapore. It led further, to Hong Kong, Dubai, even Zurich. This isn't just an Australian problem, Rowe whispered. This is global. Hale leaned back, exhaling slowly. And if that's true, Emily's just painted a target on her back bigger than ever. Emily under watch. Despite heavy police protection, Emily felt the net tightening around her. Cars lingered too long outside the safe house. Anonymous calls came through at night, silent but threatening. Once, when she stepped outside for air, she found a white lily left on the doorstep, the same flower placed on her mother's grave years earlier. They know where I am, Emily said, trembling. Hale promised her she was safe, but deep down, he wasn't certain. The informant. It was during one of these tense nights that an unlikely source came forward. Reeves, the accountant neighbor who had once spied on Emily for Morris, demanded to speak to Hale again. I want out, Reeves muttered, sweat beading on his forehead as he sat in the interrogation room. I thought it was just surveillance, just keeping tabs. I didn't know about the harvesting. Hale leaned forward. Then give us something useful. Reeves swallowed. They call it the Syndicate. Morris wasn't the top. He answered to someone higher, a man known only as the broker. Every order came through him. Every payment. Every patient. The broker. The name sent a chill down Hale's spine. The syndicates reached through Reeves' accounts and seized messages. Police began mapping the network. Doctors, administrators, smugglers, and financial operatives all working together like cogs in a machine. Some had clean records. Others had histories of misconduct quietly swept away. Rowe read aloud from a decrypted email. Shipment leaves on the 15th. Ensure donor is prepped. Payment cleared. Donor. A chilling euphemism for a living, breathing human being. This isn't just crime, Rowe said quietly. It's slaughter. The Parliament shockwave. When parts of the investigation leaked to the media, Parliament erupted. Opposition leaders demanded immediate action. Citizens filled the streets in protest, holding banners. Hospitals are for healing, not killing. And justice for Emily. Yet behind the outrage, powerful forces worked to suppress the scandal. Files disappeared from government servers. A senior minister, questioned about funding linked to Morris's research, resigned abruptly without explanation. Hale realized with sinking certainty, the syndicate wasn't just global. It had friends in high places here at home. The attempted extraction. On the 15th, the very date mentioned in the syndicate's emails, Victoria police raided a private warehouse on the docks. What they found turned even hardened officers pale. Inside, under harsh fluorescent lights, were 5 unconscious people hooked up to IV drips, each tagged only with a number. Nearby, shipping crates lined the walls, fitted with refrigeration units, organ coolers. A firefight broke out as armed guards opened fire. Hale and Rowe ducked behind cover, returning shots until the last man fell. When the smoke cleared, the victims were rushed to hospital, alive, but barely. Forensic teams worked all night. The paperwork inside the crates bore a single signature, the broker. Emily's burdened news of the raid spread like wildfire. Emily watched the coverage from her safe house, tears streaming down her face. I wasn't crazy, she whispered. It was all real. But her relief was short-lived. Later that night, a note slipped under her door read, "We don't need you alive to silence you." Her hands shook as she showed it to Hale. He tightened his jaw. They're getting desperate. That means we're close. The broker revealed, through months of digging, Reeves's testimony, and encrypted bank trails, the syndicate's leader finally came into focus. The broker wasn't a faceless figure in another country. He was Australian, a wealthy philanthropist hailed for his donations to hospitals and research programs, celebrated at charity galas. A man who stood smiling in photographs with premiers and prime ministers. Alexander Ward. Rose stared at his profile on the screen. "He's untouchable," she whispered. Hale shook his head. "No one is untouchable. Not anymore." The trap is set. Hale knew brute force wouldn't bring Ward down. The man had lawyers, politicians, and half the medical board in his pocket. They needed irrefutable evidence, something Ward couldn't buy or talk his way out of. Emily agreed to help. Despite her fear, she volunteered to wear a wire and meet a contact Ward had sent to bribe her into silence. "If this gets him locked away, I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Hale nodded, pride mixed with dread. "You're braver than most cops I know." The plan was simple, catch Ward's men admitting the truth on tape. But in operations like these, nothing ever went to plan. The meeting. In a dimly lit cafe near Docklands, Emily sat at a corner table, her heart pounding. Across from her, a sharply dressed man slid a briefcase onto the table. "Take this," he murmured. 50,000. Enough to start over. All you need to do is disappear." Emily's voice wavered as she asked, "And if I don't?" The man's eyes turned cold. "Then you'll end up like the others." Every word fed directly into Hale's earpiece, parked in a van nearby. His pulse raced. This was the evidence they needed. But before Hale could order the takedown, another voice cut through the cafe. Calm. Smooth. "Enough games." Emily froze. Turning slowly, she saw him, Alexander Ward himself, stepping out of the shadows. The broker. And he was smiling straight at her. The broker's smile. The cafe was too quiet. Every scrape of a chair, every hiss of the coffee machine seemed magnified. Emily's hands trembled around her mug as Alexander Ward, the man she had heard of only in whispers, slid into the chair opposite her. He didn't look like a criminal mastermind. Ward was polished, elegant, his silver hair neatly combed, his suit perfectly tailored. His presence carried an easy confidence, the kind of charm that convinced governments to shake his hand and newspapers to call him a hero. But his eyes, pale, calculating, gave him away. "You've caused quite the stir, Miss Carter," Ward said, his voice smooth as silk. "The police raids, the protests, the headlines, very dramatic." Emily's throat was dry, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. "People deserve to know the truth." Ward chuckled softly, shaking his head as though scolding a child. "Truth? Truth is a luxury, my dear. What matters is control. And right now, you've made yourself a very dangerous problem." In the surveillance van outside, Hale and Rowe listened, their muscles tense. This was it, the confession they needed. But Hale knew one wrong move could end Emily's life in seconds. The offer Ward tapped the briefcase in front of her. 50,000 is just the start. Walk away now, and I'll ensure you live comfortably for the rest of your life. Disappear to some sunny coast, marry, have children, all safe, all happy. Emily's breath shook. Part of her wanted to grab the money and run. But then she remembered the man she had seen strapped to that hospital bed, his eyes hollow with fear. She remembered the kidney in the vacuum-sealed bag sent to Hale. Her fear hardened into resolve. "No," she whispered, "I won't stay silent." Ward's smile faded, his eyes darkened. "Then you won't stay alive." The sting, that was Hale's signal. He pushed through the cafe doors with Rowe and a squad of officers at his back. "Alexander Ward, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, and organized crime." Patrons gasped as Ward raised his hands slowly, the picture of calm. "Detective Hale?" he said smoothly. "How predictable." Officers moved in, cuffing him. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a flicker of hope. But Ward wasn't finished. As he was let out, he leaned close to Hale and whispered, "You think this ends with me? I'm just the face you're allowed to see. Cut off one head, detective, and 3 more grow back. You'll never stop us." Hale's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. The courtroom circus Ward's arrest rocked Australia. News outlets ran live coverage, protesters filled the streets, and Parliament held emergency inquiries into hospital oversight. But inside the courtroom, Ward's legal team moved like sharks. Expensive suits, polished arguments, and endless delays. They painted Emily as unstable, traumatized, prone to hallucinations. She claims to have seen organ trafficking, one lawyer sneered. Yet where are the bodies? Where is the direct evidence linking my client to these supposed atrocities? Emily sat in the witness box, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I was there. I saw the patients. I heard him give the orders. The courtroom murmured. Ward only smirked, as if the trial was a performance staged for his amusement. The leak. Just when it seemed Ward might walk free, an anonymous source sent the police a hard drive. Inside were recordings, secret meetings, encrypted calls, and ledgers detailing every transaction. And in one recording, Ward's unmistakable voice, "Prepare the donor. Shipment leaves tomorrow." The evidence was damning, but Hale didn't celebrate. He knew enough to recognize a setup. Someone inside the syndicate had betrayed Ward. But why? And more importantly, who would take his place? The price of truth. That night, Emily's safe house was attacked. Armed men stormed the property, firing into the walls. Hale dragged her to safety, exchanging gunfire in the dark. By the time backup arrived, the attackers had vanished. Emily was shaken, her ears ringing from the blasts. They'll never stop, she sobbed. Even if Ward goes to prison, they'll keep coming. Hale crouched beside her, his voice firm. Then we keep fighting. As long as you breathe, Emily, their secrets won't stay buried. Ward's last card. In custody, Ward played his final move. He offered a deal. I'll give you names, politicians, doctors, judges, but the whole syndicate. In exchange, immunity. It was the kind of bargain that made prosecutors salivate, but Hale refused to entertain it. You'll rot in prison, Ward, and your empire will burn. Ward only laughed. Prison is temporary, detective. Power is permanent. The verdict. After months of trial, testimony, and leaked documents, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted, reporters scribbled furiously, protesters outside cheered, and Emily wept with relief. Ward, however, remained calm, his expression unreadable. As guards led him away, he leaned close to Emily and whispered, "This isn't over. You've only woken the beast." The warning. That night, Hale received an unmarked envelope on his desk. Inside was a single photo, Emily asleep in her hospital bed, taken just hours earlier. On the back, in red ink, were 3 words, "We are watching." Hale stared at the photo, rage and dread twisting in his gut. He knew then that Ward had told the truth. The syndicate wasn't broken. It was waiting. The last shadow. The photo on Hale's desk wouldn't stop burning in his mind. Emily asleep, unaware that someone had stood over her bed, camera in hand. The syndicate wasn't just alive. It was inside every wall, every shadow. Hale tightened his grip on the picture. This ends now. 2 weeks after his guilty verdict, Alexander Ward vanished. The news broke like wildfire. Organ trafficker escapes high-security transport. According to official reports, masked men ambushed the prison convoy outside Sydney. Officers were killed. Ward was gone. Emily's phone rang within the hour. It was Hale. "They'll come for you next," he said, his voice sharp. "Pack light. We're moving you." But Emily was done running. "Hale, I can't keep hiding. The public thinks Ward is finished, but the syndicate still controls everything. If I disappear now, they win." For a moment, Hale said nothing. Then, "All right, we fight, but we fight smart." The betrayal. Hale and Emily weren't the only ones planning. Within the task force, whispers spread of a mole. Files vanished, witnesses recanted, cases collapsed. It all pointed to one thing. The syndicate had friends in high places. And late one night, Hale confronted Sergeant Rowe. "It's someone close to us, feeding them everything." Rowe's face darkened. "You think it's me?" "I don't know," Hale admitted. "But if we can't trust anyone, we're already finished." That night, Hale installed his own surveillance in the precinct. What he discovered chilled him. Encrypted messages sent from inside the task force to a private server offshore. The sender? Inspector Carrington, Hale's superior. The broker's return ward resurfaced on a yacht in international waters, smiling for cameras, claiming he was a political prisoner. He gave interviews, painting himself as a victim of police corruption. "The so-called evidence against me was fabricated," Ward declared smoothly. "This is a witch hunt. Australia should be ashamed." Shockingly, some politicians agreed. Campaigns began calling for an investigation into police misconduct. Emily watched the broadcasts, fury boiling in her chest. "He's turning it around. They're believing him." Hale leaned closer. "Then we show them what they can't ignore." The hidden files. The anonymous leak that exposed Ward once before, it hadn't been random. Hale traced it back to a single source, a whistleblower inside the syndicate known only as Sparrow. Sparrow's files hinted at something bigger than organ trafficking. Financial documents, offshore accounts, payments to government officials. If released, it wouldn't just destroy Ward, it would scorch half the country's elite. But Sparrow demanded a price, protection. "We meet tonight," Sparrow's message read. "Melbourne docks, midnight. Come alone." The dockside ambush. The night was heavy with fog. Cargo ships loomed like skeletons in the mist. Hale and Emily waited, the waves slapping against the pylons. A figure emerged. Sparrow, a woman in her 30s, face shadowed by a hood. "You don't know me?" she said softly. "But I've seen what they do. I've recorded everything. Ward isn't the head, he's just a broker. The true syndicate runs through hospitals, banks, even parliament." She handed Hale a USB drive. "This is the proof." But before Hale could speak, headlights flared, vans screeched to a halt. Masked men poured out, guns raised. "It's a trap!" Emily screamed. Gunfire erupted. Hale shoved Emily behind a container, returning fire as Sparrow fell, a bullet tearing through her chest. Blood pooled as she thrust the USB into Hale's hand. "Don't waste it," she gasped. Then she was gone. The final chase. Hale and Emily fled through the docks, bullets sparking off steel. A black SUV roared to life, and behind the wheel was Alexander Ward himself. His grin was visible even in the dark. "You can't run forever." Hale dragged Emily into a warehouse, ducking behind machinery. "We end it here." Ward's men stormed in, but Hale fought like a man possessed. One by one, they fell. Emily, terrified but resolute, swung a heavy pipe, knocking down an attacker who grabbed her. Finally, only Ward remained. He held a pistol, his aim steady. "You think you've won?" Ward sneered. "You've only scratched the surface. Without me, the syndicate will thrive. Kill me, and another will take my place." Hale didn't flinch. "Then we'll burn every last one of you." A single shot rang out. Ward collapsed, his gun clattering to the floor. Emily stood frozen, smoke rising from the weapon in her hands. She had fired. The police arrived minutes later, sirens splitting the night. Ward's body was zipped into a bag. His men were arrested. But the USB, Sparrow's final gift, changed everything. When its contents went public, the country erupted. Names of doctors, judges, politicians tied to the syndicate flashed across screens. Careers ended overnight. Investigations opened on every level of government. It wasn't the end of the syndicate, but it was a wound, deep, bleeding, and impossible to ignore. Epilogue. Months later, Emily stood on the steps of the Royal Melbourne Hospital. She had returned, not as a nurse, but as an advocate for patient rights. Cameras clicked as she spoke. "We were taught to save lives, not sell them. What happened was a betrayal, but it will never happen again, not on our watch." Hale watched from the crowd, pride swelling in his chest. He knew the fight wasn't over. The syndicate was wounded, but not dead. Somewhere out there, new brokers were already rebuilding. But for now, justice had a face, and her name was Emily Carter. As Hale lit a cigarette and stared at the skyline, he muttered to himself, "The shadows will always be there, but so will we."